low. I'd probably defend it against like a button open, given it has good semi-bluff potential when we flop a low draw or nut flush draw. But we see a free flop, and we end up flopping middle set on a 3-card low board with a straight possible. Usually in these spots when you flop sets on 3 low card boards, especially ones that contain a straight possible, they're going to be a hand that you're going to fold on the flop. And the reason for that is because a hand is weak as, well, it's not weak, but let's say he has king, queen, 4, 5. So current nut high with no other redraw to it. That hand's going to have a set of 3s smashed. And the reason is because we'll never be able to overtake the 4, 5 if we have a naked set for low. So let's say we have 3, 3, king, jack, and he has king, queen, 4, 5. He's just free rolling us completely with the 4, 5 low. Now, this hand ends up being a little bit different, or significantly different, because in this case, when he has the 4, 5 low, we have the live ace draw, and on a turn or river 4 or 5, we make the best low. So, and that's a big boost to our equity. I brought up a sim just to illustrate that point, which shows that if we change our side card from an ace to a king, we have 18% equity against the current nut high, specifically king, queen, 4, 5, where just having the live ace draw boosts our equity, not quite double, but almost so, up to 31%. Takes me a minute or two to think through this spot, but I end up coming to the same conclusion that I just showed and make the call. The turn we brick. We call the blank turn, and river, I believe, goes check, check. And the river comes up a card that we were specifically talking about that would counterfeit a 4, 5 low, which he in fact did have, and we end up winning the low half of the pot. On table 2, we open up ace 10, 7, 4 from the cutoff and flop bottom 2. On table 1, even though it's been min raised, that hand's just trash and too weak to be defending. We see bet on table 2, and he check calls, I believe. On this turn, we should be betting again. If I recall correctly, we end up checking back, and I think it's a mistake. I know my thinking at the time was because I held the ace of diamonds, that he doesn't have as many flush draws, and we don't block any kings, so he may contain a lot of top pairs that peeled flop. However, given that we have blockers to other 2-pair combos with the 10-4, and that other draws he's going to contain are going to probably have to fold now that the board's paired, I think it's a mistake to be checking. On table 2, we have another weak hand that looks like it has some good potential, but is going to flop way too marginal to be defending. Table 2, we open a quite strong hand with ace, king, 6 deuce, and we get 3-bet. It's worthwhile noting the sizing. The 3-bet's pretty small, which usually is indicative of a non-ace-ace hand. Usually when somebody holds aces, they want to get as much money in pre-flop as possible. They also want to make sure it goes heads up. These smaller raise sizes are more often hands that contain really good low potential. So Given that read, I think the best play is to go ahead and 4-bet, because our ace king has dominates the high portion of the hands he has in his 3-betting range for that sizing, and I think we're an equity favorite. He flats, which further confirms our suspicion that he doesn't have aces, and we flop extremely well. I could bet smaller, but I go ahead and pot it, given I'm never bet folding for that sizing in these stacks, and I don't think he's folding much either with his range. On table 1, we open some weak aces, and we take to the flop 4-way. The flop looks like we actually flop quite well, but if you think about the runouts that we're hoping for, there's really not that many good cards for us on the turn. We certainly would really like a jack, giving us a strong high hand with no low possible. A 6 improves us to a straight as well, but that completes the low, which we won't have. And now we check it to player 3, and he bets pot. And surprisingly, I'm going to go ahead and fold. I say surprisingly because when you first look at the flop, it looks like we flopped a lot with the backdoor flush draw, the open-ender, the middle pair, the aces. But you really have to think forward to turn and river, and if this is a spot where we talked about earlier in the PowerPoint slides where he has an ace-deuce type hand and let's say a gutter, let's say he has ace-queen, jack, deuce. Well, on a 3, on a 4, on a 5, on a 6, he's going to have nut low, and he's going to have no problem potting into us. On a 9, he'll overtake us on the high end. But basically, the gist of the story is that we're going to have a hard time getting to showdown, given that there's so few runouts that we are going to like. Table 2, even if button opens, we'll be folding. I just mention it because if you're not really familiar with pre-flop equities in this game, it's a hand that looks like it might be worthwhile, given it has a pair and a decent low potential. But those are the spots that I was talking about where I encourage you just to go ahead and run them in Pro Poker Tools. Just quickly hit the rank button and see where it ranks and if it fits into a range that you think you should be defending. I did that quickly for you, and you can see that it's about a 57 percentile hand, and certainly outside of the threshold that we'll be defending from the small blind. The Jack-Jack 8-8 is certainly not a strong hand, but the flops that it does hit are going to contain, are going to have a lot of equity, and it's not really going to be that hard of a hand to play because we're going to be continuing only when we flop sets. Table 2, we have a good-looking hand with ace-king 10-5, and our decision is whether we should flat call or 3-bet. And given that we have a lot of high potential with the ace-king 10, we can go ahead and push our equity advantage over other hands that contain even better low cards than us, because we can actually win the high with ace-king high sometimes, or just a single pair. We don't flop well at all after he flats, and I opt to go ahead and check back. The turn actually is okay for us, because if he doesn't have a pocket pair in his hand, or he didn't pair his didn't pair a 4, then he most likely has a worse high hand. Now on the river, it's a pretty interesting spot, given that he bets, and And we just finished with a pair of aces and nines with a king kicker. But he did raise under the gun, and he's not going to contain many 9x combos, very few 8-8 combos, and we block ace-ace down to one combo. So the vast majority of the time, he's either going to have a complete bluff, which is rare, given that he should have a lot of showdown value. Raising under the gun, he should at least contain one ace almost always. And so that brings us to the other hands he's going to have, which are going to be a lot of ace with two other low card combos. So I would say that the vast majority of the time here he has some ace with a low, either ace deuce 3, ace 3-5, ace 5-7, things like that. And given that we have ace king, I think our kicker plays a extremely high frequency. The times that we lose, I think we're actually going to be getting 3/4 some, but I think our ace king is going to scoop the high enough that we can go ahead and make a call. He ends up showing up with a fairly weak hand for raising under the gun, but just one of the rare combos that contain ace-9, and I am good with the call on the river, just unfortunate results-wise. On table 2, obviously we are happy to get any action. We go ahead and 3-bet with fairly strong aces, just given that we have at least one wheel card with it and a nut suit. Again, obviously, so we flop well, and it's worth mentioning that this ace-ace on ace 4-4 is even stronger than just naked aces with our 5-7 low draw, and we can make a exploitable bet sizing of a little bit smaller than we normally would, given that we have the low end of the pot locked up, and it's not as important for us to protection bet like we were mentioning in that other aces hand earlier on table 1. I think I'm going to wrap up part 1's footage right here and continue on this hand for part 2. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you in part 2. Thanks. This is Zach Freeman for Run It Once.